I'd like to welcome Kevin Rudd to say a few words and hopefully tell a few jokes as well.
Thank you, Brian, and to all of you who support Heartkids Australia, and those of you who are from the medical profession, and with whom I've been speaking in the last half hour or so, and to those of you who are parents of heart kids themselves, and those of you who just have a heart for what we're doing. It's an interesting thing having featured in this television ad for Heartkids Australia. I remember the day in which we did it, which was here in Brisbane, Vegas, capital of the world. And I think I'd been at a launch with you guys. Then I was wheeled to one side to record a television advertisement, and I obviously hadn't read my briefing properly, so I just sat down and extemporated, I think.
Well, you did it in one take.
Yeah, that's right. And without a teleprompter, so which I'm glad, because I was just speaking from the heart. But what's been interesting since then is I wander around Australia, there's a number of people who now come up to me and say, "Are you all right?" Now, I'm not sure that's a reflection on recent political developments, or on a fundamental observation of my general health and cardiac well-being. But it's been kind of interesting. And I certainly have received lots of communications from people saying, "What should I do?" My clinical advice, by the way, is to go and see your nearest cardiologist. and I'm sure if it's necessary, they'll have a gaggle, a flock, a herd of cardiac physicians and surgeons to whom your loved one can be referred. That's my wife calling. It is. I'm just addressing a group of Heartkids Australia. Just call it back from tech. Bye. She's in London. So,
tell us to know what you do.
Yeah.
She didn't scream.
Intelligent partners and intelligent wives always have that view.
She actually knows.
Yeah, she does. A word or two about what you're all doing. The first is this. To those of you who are in the medical profession, both as researchers, as cardiologists and as cardiac surgeons, can I just say, as someone who's been on the wrong end of the knife a couple of times now, how much I value your expertise. I'm also wise enough, I hope, to understand that to acquire such expertise represents an investment of decades and decades and decades of hard work and application. Expertise does not materialise out of outer space. It does not spontaneously combust in your cerebral cortex. It's because you have a passion for what you do and you work really hard at it. And I value, therefore, you as people and what you do for the well-being of humankind. More broadly, of course, that applies to the medical profession. If you go to any family anywhere in the world, whether it's to folk who are about to take their last and gasping breath in the deserted areas of Somalia and looking for possible sustenance for their dying child, or someone in a cardiac ward here in downtown Brisbane. There's nothing more basic in anyone's life than, will I live? And I just honour the medical profession because here in this country and your colleagues I've met right around the world, you take actually your Hippocratic oath seriously, but you take your professionalism just as seriously. And without you, this world of ours will be a vastly different place. You as medicos, a bit like those of us who pursue politics, are often whacked around the heads for the things you get wrong and are rarely praised for the things that you get right. Although I would say to you who are medicators, well done. A noble profession. Nobler than mine. The other thing I'd say to those of you who are parents of children who have one form or other of child heart disease, CHD, is everything I've just said about the medical profession, I think, would resonate within your bones, because you've seen that, you've seen your precious little possum at the hands of surgeons who care deeply for his or her survival and who apply every bit of their professionalism and their passion as human beings to make sure your little investment in humanity survives, flourishes, lives, and has some of the experiences that we have as human beings. What's impressed me as a kid growing up, and as someone who's deeply and fundamentally and unapologetically medically illiterate, is just how much this has changed since I was first diagnosed as someone who suffered from rheumatic fever in the early 1970s. Of course, for white kids, rheumatic fever was supposed to have been a disappearing condition by about then. I was probably at the fag end of the intake. Regrettably for Indigenous children, that's not the case. And it is horrific what still pertains in Aboriginal Australia and across the world with the effect of rheumatic fever with kids in developing countries. The good news is all this is overcomable, both through science and through governments, where they're smart enough to do it, taking the right decisions. I hope we've been among them. And around the world as well. And certainly it's always attracted my eye when we fund programs for the World Health Organisation through the growing Australian aid budget, which is now the 7th largest in the world, that I always lend an ear to what they're doing globally on the elimination, finally, of rheumatic fever around the world. And the work which is being done on vaccines to that effect through the multiple investments we've done with Gavi-related research projects as well. So you may think that we are remotely engaged in politics on these questions, and some of us bring a closer mind to bear, often for reasons which are personal, but because we see every kid as having a legitimate right to have a decent go. For those of you who are parents as well and carers, my heart goes out to you. I've not been one because my children have excellent cardiac health. Mine was acquired, not congenital. But I know something, having seen the look of concern in my mother's eye as a little child here in Brisbane, being toted along to the Prince Charles Hospital back in the Mesolithic period, that parents go through hell. So for those of you who've been on this journey, I have something of an understanding of what you are going through, but as each year rolls by, the story gets better and better and better. Which brings me to my final point about what you do through Heartkids itself. The work in supporting families and kids as they go through this quite difficult journey is tough. And frankly, having a bunch of smart folks and compassionate folks joining forces to support parents and families and kids through this is a really good thing, which is why I've been pleased to lend my own support to it. And there are at least 2,000 parents of Heartkids in Australia who feel the same way each year as they receive the news that they are that 1 in 100 who's given birth to a child with a congenital heart condition. Finally, and I thank Brian for elevating expectations before I spoke and said that I'd be full of laughter, humour and spontaneity and lots of jokes. I remember having been diagnosed with rheumatic fever and facing the inevitability of aortic transplant surgery, which against the spectrum of conditions that many of your children have is quite minor. I understand that. But I remember, this is a joke against the medical profession, by the way. Yves is Belgian, he's not French, like Hercule Poirot. And he's from Melbourne, but we forgive him for that. It's a great reflection, I think, on the evolution of pedagogy and the wisdom of the ages. When I was a diplomat in the embassy in Beijing, like a fool, I thought, and always believing that I was physically robust, despite the fact that I'd been puffing for some years by then. I remember our winter tradition in Beijing was to play cricket on the ice against the British embassy at the lake at the Summer Palace, frozen, sort of several feet thick. I went out there and proceeded to catch pneumonia. Not a good thing, just generally not a good thing. It's just generally dumb patient behaviour. But I remember coming back, they medically evacuated me back to Australia, to Prince Charles, thinking that this was a real problem. And I was feeling crook, I must admit. And I remember running into this bumptious resident at Prince Charles Hospital, to whom I took an instant dislike. An instant dislike. You know, when residents in particular believe they know everything and you know nothing. Have you ever had that experience? I'm sure it's only ever happened to me. You know, I'm sure medicos always get it right, you know, politicians would always get it wrong. I remember this bloke who looked at my chart, and he looked at my symptomology, and without actually waiting for tests to come back, he said, I regret to inform you that you do have subbacterial endocarditis, SBE, which for most of this audience will mean a fair bit, which means that whatever you once had sunshine, you've now got a lot more of. Even I understood that. I said, really? And I said, how do you know that? He said, oh, I've just seen so many cases. I said, like a year younger than I am. At that stage I was in my late 20s. He would have been 26 or something or other. What they describe in the Bonfire of the Vanities as one of the masters of the universe. I said, oh, well, you may well be right. And so he then, 2 days later, came back with his supervising cardiologist, a guy by the name of Rupert Graf here in Brisbane. And as Rupert said, no, it's not SBE at all. We've got all the pathology results back. You've just got a very, very bad flu. And I turned to said cardiologist, and with all the humility I could muster, said, learn from your betters. I enjoyed that. I'm not sure it was modest or gracious, but I tried to bear it in mind every time I stuff up on something. Sometimes we all stuff up. But I say that in the context of having deep respect for the professionalism of your profession. So to the extent that it remains useful for you, I'll remain attached to what you do as Heartkids Australia. I'm pleased that you've got a large number of hits on the website. I hope that helps in raising awareness, raising dollars, and supporting those who are at the cutting edge of this. Medical science and research and the applications, and the surgical techniques, the devices and the rest. Because this is a big challenge for public health in Australia. It's still the number one. And let's be path breakers globally in delivering an even better future for our kids than we've had for ourselves. Thank you.